Hi guys, welcome. This is assignment 5, dynamic blocks. We're going to first start off by going into assignment 3 that you guys did with attributes and blocks. And I'm going to open that up first thing. And the first thing I'm going to do is go into model space, and we're going to just copy out one of these desks and one of these monitors, one of these phones, and one of these chairs. I'm going to use this existing geometry. So I'm just going to highlight this stuff, and I'm going to right click and go to the clipboard and copy. And then I'm going to start a new drawing from scratch. And I'm going to right click and go into the clipboard and paste it. So we'll just paste it in there. Zoom extents, and that's a good starting point. I can close assignment 3 out. I don't need to save that anymore. And first thing we're going to do in here is I'm going to explode all of this stuff so that I can get the attributes out of here. And the only reason I'm doing that for this assignment is just to avoid confusion. With the attributes in here, it just makes for a lot of extra stuff in here. So let's just rotate this around, and I'll just rotate it straight up like that. I'm going to rotate my chair so that it's square to the desk. So I'm going to rotate it by this end point right there. R for reference, I want a reference angle. So my reference angle starts here and goes to here using my endpoint snaps. That new angle should be 0. So put that in just like that. I'm going to move it. I should turn on my object snaps here, I guess. I'm going to move it from midpoint. Let's turn on midpoint. Midpoint to midpoint, and then I'm going to move it back a little bit. So there we go. I'm going to move my phone to the right side of my desk. I'm going to move my computer just a little bit out there. And I think the computer's a little bit small, so I'm going to scale that up a little bit. And I don't want it that big. I'm going to turn off my object snaps here for a second so that way they don't get in the way. Just want it a little bit bigger like that. That looks a little bit better. Okay, so now that I have all that housekeeping done, I want to go in here and remake these blocks. That'll be pretty quick. I want to remake all the blocks except for the desk. I'm going to leave the desk as 4 lines. So we'll go in here, and I'll just go into the block command. I'm going to pick phone first and pick the insertion point from my phone, select the objects like that, and retain, actually convert those to a block. That's good, and that's it. We'll redefine it. So now we have the phone block back again. Let's make the computer back up again. So we'll just pick right there for the insertion point. Not that concerned with those at this point. So we'll redefine that. And lastly, I'm going to do the chair. And pick point here. We'll do someplace there in the middle. And we'll just do that sort of thing like that. And redefine it. And now we have chair, computer, and telephone. Alright. So now we're going to make this into one large block. So we'll have a nested block. We'll have blocks within blocks. For this assignment, what we're going to do is basically make an office suite where we have the chair and some other chairs in here. So I'm going to actually, before we make our big block, I could call it, I'm going to make a copy of this chair and rotate it. So we'll just rotate that chair around like that. We're going to move it over and like that. And We'll make a copy of the chair so that we have two of them. So we'll get them a little more evened out here. There we go. That looks good. Okay, so this is going to end up being my block. So we'll type in block, and we'll call this desk set. Our insertion point, I'm going to make my insertion point the midpoint over here of the side of the desk. I'll select my objects and pick everything, like so, and convert to block. That's good. I'll hit OK, and now I'm all set to start the dynamic block lesson. So the whole thing behind dynamic blocks is being able to have options for your block when you insert them, such as the size of an object, or different views of an object, or different positions of an object, and you can do this all with dynamic blocks. So it's a little bit more involved than regular blocks, and that's why I'm going over this assignment step by step, so that you guys can see how it works exactly. So I'm going to just double click on this desk set and hit OK to edit this in our block editor. As soon as you're in the block editor, you'll notice over here we have this tool tab, if you will, and I'm going to just basically dock this over to my side like so by clicking on the side. And basically what we have in here are parameters, actions, parameter sets, which are just combinations of actions and parameters, and constraints. We're going to stay away from constraints for today. I think if you guys have taken the Inventor class, you know a little bit about constraints already and how they work. We can do similar things in AutoCAD, but we're going to stay away from them for right now and just basically focus today on parameters and actions. Everything to do with dynamic blocks has to do with parameters and actions, and you have to put in a parameter first, and most parameters have an action that follows them, and you'll see that here next. So we'll start out with a real simple alignment parameter. The alignment parameter lets you align a block to another object in AutoCAD, like a line at an angle, and I'll demonstrate that as soon as we put it in. So I'll click on alignment here, and when I click on alignment, it wants me to pick the base point for the alignment. So I want my desk to align on the right hand side here, so I'm going to pick the midpoint right where we picked our base point right here, and then I'm going to drag straight down. Notice that you have this dotted line on here. This is the alignment angle or direction. So I want it going from here down, which will align it outwards. So you can see it puts on this little icon here, which is the alignment icon. And the way that you design these blocks, these dynamic blocks, is to test them over and over and over again. So everyone's recommendation, if you watch any of these online with other people, or if you look at a book that has information about dynamic blocks, basically what they tell you to do is put in a parameter, and usually you follow that with an action, and then you test the block to see if it works or not. So there's a lot of testing going back and forth. So up here in your ribbon, you'll notice that you have this thing called test block. So that lets you test the block out. Alignment is one of the few parameters that don't require an action. So you basically put in the alignment, and then you can test it out in this environment right here. So I'll click on test block, and what it does is it basically sets up a temporary window space for you. So I'm going to just draw in a couple lines at a couple angles like this, and we'll highlight our block. And notice when I do, we have that little grip here, the alignment grip. So if I pick on that alignment grip, we have a machine backup going on here. Let's close that down. So I'll click on this grip here, and when I bring it over here to this line, watch what'll happen. It'll align to that. So depending on where I drag, it's aligning to that, and it will flip side to side depending on where you're dragging. So you can see if I click right here, it's aligning to that. If I make a copy of this, let's make a copy of our block, and we'll put it out here, and I'll do the same thing. I'll click on this grip, bring it over here, and then when I get over here like this, you can see how it aligns. So that could be handy for, a lot of blocks that you bring in. Just that alone can save yourselves, quite a few steps. You can move, rotate, tweak it and all that sort of stuff. So this saves you quite a bit amount of time. So by testing this out, we can see that that's working. It might be nice to have also a flip handle, so that way if you're aligning it this way and you want to flip it to the other side or mirror image it to the other side, you could have another grip in here for that as well. So when you're done testing your block, you just come up to the ribbon and close the test block button right here. Brings you back into this block editor. So let's next put on our flip parameter. So the flip parameter does require an action because it wants to know what you're selecting, what you're flipping, and all that sort of stuff. So we'll put in this flip parameter right here, and so I'll click on flip, and it wants me to specify a base point of the reflection line, or a name or a label or a description or a palette. Those things you don't have to worry about really right now. So I'll just click right here. I'll put it down here in the bottom right hand corner. So I'm going to just put it right there at that endpoint. And now again, notice that I have this dotted line. This will be my mirror line. So where do I want this desk set to mirror? Well, I want it to mirror straight up and down on this edge right here. So I'll just kind of click there again, and then I'll get this little piece of text which is flip state number 1. I'll put it in there just like that, and this is the icon that we'll see, the little cyan icon. But notice we also have this little alert with a little exclamation point in yellow. So whenever you see those, basically that means that you need to put its associated action with it. So we haven't done an action yet, so we're not completely done with doing this little set right now. So I'm going to click on actions in here, and under actions, notice under actions we can do things like move and scale and stretch, okay? But here's our flip, okay, which is basically mirror. So I'll click on flip, and basically it wants you to select the parameter. So notice it says select parameter. So we basically just click on flip state right here, and then it's asking us to select the object. So what do we want to flip? Well, we want to flip everything, including this icon right here for the alignment. So I'm just gonna make a crossing window around everything and select everything all at once and hit enter. And as soon as I do that, our exclamation point or our alert will change, and it'll put in the little icon there for the action. So when I hover over that action, notice that we can close this out, but don't do that. That'll actually delete it, so we don't want to do that. If I right click on this, we can delete the action. We can add a new selection set or modify the existing selection set. We can rename it, and we can show or hide actions. Okay, so now that we did that, we need to test it just like we've done before. So we'll go up here to test block again and click on test block, and I'll do the same thing with the 2 lines. Notice those lines that we put in are just temporary, so you can not worry about erasing them or whatever. So I'll click on this, and we'll click on the alignment grip, and we'll bring it over here, and it aligns just nicely. And let's just check the flip grip here, so we'll click on that, and sure enough, it flips from side to side. The alignment seems to be working just fine, so we can test it out and make sure that it's working. So this process is basically called flexing your block. You're basically testing it and flexing it to make sure that it acts the way that it's supposed to act before you actually use it. So we'll close this out, and then we'll move on to our next thing. So the next thing we're going to look at under parameters is a linear dimension. So basically what we want to do is give people the opportunity to size this desk to different sizes. So we're going to basically click on this linear dimension right here, and we're going to pick two endpoints. So I'll turn on my object snaps again. So I'll click here, and I'll click here, and I'll drag this out. Okay, so when I put that in here, notice we get arrows at both ends. We have our little exclamation point here, and this is our parameter here for distance 1. So we want to basically stretch this desk out. So we need to add our action in here to stretch our desk. So first step is put in linear. Second step is to pick action and then come in here, and we're going to do stretch now. So we'll do stretch, and it asks me to select the parameter. So we'll pick distance 1. And notice up here we have this little red X with a circle. Basically, what side do you want to stretch it on? The left or the right? Well, I want to stretch it over here on the left, because on the right hand side, this is where we're inserting it, and this is where we're aligning it to, in this case here. So I want to put it in right here. And now it asks me to put in the first corner of the stretch frame. So we want to be able to stretch this out. So I'm going to basically come in here and make a crossing window through the distance parameter through the objects that we want to stretch. So we want to stretch this line and this line. This line here is totally encompassed in here, so that line will move. This line and this line will stretch. So that's our frame that we put in, and then it asks us one more time to select the objects. So I'm going to have to make one more crossing window like this through here, like so, and that will go ahead and pick up those, and then we'll hit enter to accept that, and it puts on our little stretch down here. And why is that still showing up there as a exclamation point? Well, let's test it out to see what happens. So we'll go up here to test block, and let's pick this. We have this as our stretch, and it seems to be working fine. So we can see that it actually stretches. So I can stretch it all the way out to here, and you can see that it seems to be working just fine. So we'll close that out, and we still have this icon on here. So hold on a second, and let me figure out why that's happening. Okay, so I figured out what was going on, and I'll explain that to you guys here in a second. So first thing I'm going to do is take this flip state out of the way for a little bit. I'm going to just move it up. Doesn't matter where that is, really. It could be up here someplace. We can just kind of put those up there together just to keep it out of the way of that other parameter. So we'll put in linear parameter again here, and I'm going to click here just like we did before. This was our start point, and this was our ending point. So it depends on where you pick. Okay, and then I'll put that action back in here for stretch again, and we'll pick this one here, and this is where I want to stretch it from, this point right here. So then we'll put our frame around here, okay, all of this, and I'll cross through what I want to stretch here like that, just like before, and I'll hit enter. and I still have that exclamation point here. And the reason for that is because this arrowhead has a parameter for the stretch going to the left. This one here expects us to put a parameter in going to the right. So to get rid of that, I'm going to basically click on distance 1 here, the linear parameter. I'll pick on that, right click, and go into the properties of this. And in properties for the linear parameter, okay, here's linear parameter right here. Down here under number of grips, 2, okay, which is 1, 2. I want to basically make that so that it's 1, okay. I only want 1 grip on there, right there, and you can see when I do that, this exclamation point goes away because it's only dealing with this one side. So that takes care of that. So now we can flex this and see how this works. So we'll do the test block thing again, and we'll come in here and actually stretch this out. We can see it stretching just fine. You can make it bigger or smaller, but we don't want people using this block to be able to stretch it to some kind of weird size. Typically desks come in specific lengths, so we want to give it specific lengths and give the user only a few choices. So in order to do that, we're going to close the block test block here, and we're going to come in and do a couple of things. First thing we're going to do is we're going to click on distance 1 right here and right click on it and go back into the properties, and in here under this value set that you see right here, right now the distance type is set to none. And if we drop this down, we can have increments or list. So if we click on list, for instance, right now it knows that the dimension from here to here is 72 inches, basically 6 feet long. So I want to give it some other values in here. So I can basically click on this, and right next to 72 we have this little icon right here, and if I click on that, right now we only have one distance in here of 72. If I click add in here, I have to basically put in what distance I want to add. So I want a 6-foot desk, a 6'6" desk, a 7-foot desk, and a 7'6" desk. So I'm going to just put in the actual inch values for those. So we have a 72, I'm going to put in a 78, and I'll hit add. And then I'll have an 84, and I'll hit add. And then I'll have a 90, and I'll hit add. So by putting these in, we're basically telling AutoCAD that we only want these 4 values, and we don't want someone to be able to stretch it arbitrarily. We want them to be able to stretch only to these 4 values right here. So I've hit OK on that. Notice it'll put these little tick marks in here now, and I can close properties, and I can say test block now. And when we come in here and we zoom up to this thing, I can click on this, and when I click on this button right here for stretch, notice that 72 shows up here, and we have these little tick marks. So as I move it out, notice that my cursor snaps to that first point right there. So that's my 6'6" desk. If I click on it again, there's my 7-foot desk. If I click on it again and move it out, there's my other one, which is my 7'6" desk. And if I try to go any further out, it won't go any further. It's only gonna let me pick these 4 parameters, and that's it. So you can see it kind of just jumps between these. All right. So there's a better way to do that than what we just did here. So and that's to put this in what we call a lookup table. So this is flexing fine right now, so we'll go ahead and close this, and then we'll go ahead and put up a lookup table. And lookup tables basically work with these type of parameters in here that we already have set up. So we're going to go back up to parameters, and I'm going to click on lookup, and we'll bring this out and decide where we're going to put it, and I'll put it like right over here someplace. Right here is good. And again, lookup again needs an action. That's why we have the exclamation point. So we'll come up here and click on actions, and then we'll click on the lookup action. So when we click on that, it asks me to select the parameter, so I have to pick lookup 1. And when I do that, this dialog box will pop up, and the first thing I want to do is click on add properties right here. And basically we have two things that we can pick from right now, is the flip state 1, which lets you flip it, or distance 1, all right, which is our linear. So I want distance 1. This is our parameter that we want to use, is distance 1, as you can see. And when I put that in here, the first thing that we're going to have is 72, so I can put that in, and I can click this next row here, and I can drop this down and put in 78. Click this next row, put in 84. Click this next row and put in 90. Okay, so that puts in all these values here, and then over here, this is what the person would actually see. These are the actual distances, but this is kind of what the person would see here. So you can put in anything you want that makes sense to somebody. So I would put in, for instance, 6 foot 0 inches, and I'll say desk. And then we'll go and say 6 foot 6 inch desk. And then we'll come down to this one and we'll do 7 foot 0 inch desk. And this last one here we'll put in 7 foot 6 inch desk. And we'll hit OK. So that puts in this little lookup table, and let's see how that works now. So we'll go into test the block. Click on test block. It comes up. We'll zoom up to it. As soon as we highlight this, we still have this ability to do this sort of thing, okay? But we also have this lookup table now. So if we click this down, we can see we have 6 foot desk, 6 desk, 7 foot, 7 foot 6. So if I say 7 foot 6 desk, puts that out there like that. We put 6, we have that. 7 foot. Make sure that you pick all the parameters to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Don't just assume that just because one works, they all work. So make sure that you pick them all. But now we have some sort of redundancy. We have this button right here, which is doing basically the same thing that this is doing. So you don't need both of these. So we're going to end up turning this one off at this point. So we'll close the test block here, and in order to turn this off in here, we're going to basically click on this and right click and go back into the properties, and number of grips, we're going to set it to 0. And by doing that, we get rid of both sides now, so you can see how that works. And let's test it again. We're constantly testing this out to make sure it all works, and sure enough, that's gone. So whenever you see this drop down, we have our 6 foot 6 desk, our 7 foot desk, and our 7 foot 6 desk, so on and so forth. All right, so we'll close that up. There we go. So you can see we're building this thing slowly as we're going, and not to be overwhelmed when you guys look at the homework assignment. It looks kind of scary when you first look at it because there's a lot of parameters going on, but you want to take one thing at a time. Just take one parameter at a time, one action at a time, test it, make sure it works, go on and move on to the next thing. So the next thing that we're going to do would be, I want to be able to have the ability to move these guest chairs around. I also want to be able to move the workstation chair around. But I'm going to start up here with these guest chairs. So under this parameter, I'm going to use the point option here. So I'll click on point, and basically what that does is it gives us a grip to move things by. So I'm going to click the midpoint right there in the middle of that chair, and I'll just kind of drag this out. Okay, it's called position 1, and then the action for this is going to be move. So I want to use the move action. So I'll pick position 1, And now it asks me to select the object, so I'll select the chair and make sure that you select the chair and the parameter. Both of them need to be selected, and then we'll hit enter. And now you see here we have the move action, we have the move parameter. Let's flex it and see what happens. Test the block. So we'll come in here and we'll click on this, and now I can move that chair wherever I want within the block, and it'll stay a block, and it lets me move it around. Okay, so that seems to be working. I'd also like to be able to rotate it as well as move it. That would be kind of nice too. So we'll close this out, and now we'll go back into parameters again, and we'll do a rotational parameter. So rotation, and I'm going to rotate it over here. I'll use yeah, we'll just basically rotate it around this point right here. That'd probably be a good point, I suppose. So we'll click right there, and when you do, this is our base point for our rotation. Then you get this rotation handle, and you can just drag this out. It doesn't matter how big you make it. So I'll just drag it out like that, and we get this angle in here. We can start at a specific angle, but I want the ability to rotate it 360 degrees, so we're going to leave it just like this. So I'll click again, and now I have that parameter in here. So now we have to put in the action associated with this. So we'll click actions and rotate. So we'll click on the angle, and then it asks me to select the objects, which is going to be the chair and the rotation angle, okay, and the parameter. Okay, so we'll make sure that you pick all that stuff like that and hit enter, and let's test it to see how that works. Okay, so we'll come in here now and look at it. We'll click on this. Here's our rotational handle, and you can see how we can rotate that now. This is where we put the actual rotational handle. This is where we clicked to anchor it, so you can see how it is rotating around that point there. So we'll do that, and then we can use move to move it. Now the problem is, you can see here when we move it, the rotation didn't move with the handle. When we moved this, the rotation didn't move with this, and now this rotational handle, you can see where it's rotating from right here. It's no longer rotating how we want it to rotate. So we have to fix that. Alright, so I'll hit escape here, and we'll get out of this testing the block here, and we'll look at that. So this is the point at which you can rotate this. This is the actual rotational grip right here, and this is what you pick on. Alright, so in order to fix what we just did, what we have to do is include this and this in the selection. So we need to redo the selection set. So I'm going to right click on the action here of move, and under action selection set, we're going to come in here and say modify selection set. So it's showing me what's selected right now, which is the chair, and I'm going to reselect the angle, and I'm going to reselect the position, both of them together, and I'll hit enter, and that should lock that in. And we'll go in here and test the block one more time. So we'll come in here and look at this. So as I rotate this, that still didn't rotate. Why didn't that rotate? That's interesting. So we'll move this over here. Oh, okay, it's moving and it's rotating. All right. Something still seems to be odd on it, but it seems to be working, right? All right. Basically, the move is moving off of the position here based on the rotation. You can see that here, so you can see that's kind of not moving. So it's kind of getting us a little bit confused. So what we want to do is we want to fix this. and I actually clicked on the move action instead of the rotation action. So that's basically, both of these actions have to include both of, or everything in here. So this one right here, the rotate, so when I click on rotate and hit modify selection set, all right, we didn't get the position here, so I need to click on these, and those are already selected. So what we did before was we clicked on this and did modify, and then we added that. So we want to make sure that everything is in the angle and in the position. So we want to test this block again and see what it looks like now. I think it's pretty good now. So if we move that, notice that this and this move together, and when I rotate this, that and that stay in the same place, and I can move this around and I can put it there and I can rotate it around, and it seems to be working right. So let's do that same thing again for this other chair, just to avoid some confusion here. So the steps again were parameters. Point is the first thing. I'll put that in here, and we'll position that over here like that. And the action for that is going to be move. So we pick the parameter. We pick the chair and the parameter together and hit enter. And we might as well go ahead and put in rotate. So this one here, I want to rotate same place right here in this corner, and we'll put that out here like so, and we'll hit enter. All right, so it's basically the same as this one. We'll go in here to the actions and click rotate. This time we pick the angle, the rotation angle, and we're going to select everything. All right, so we got the position and the angle and the chair, everything selected all at once. The only thing we have to do here is we have to redo the move one. So notice, watch this, when I right click on the move action, and we go into the action set and modify this, notice that everything is highlighted except for the angle. So we need to add that in. So we need to add this stuff in as well and hit enter, and that should take care of it. So let's test this out. So let's see if this one's rotating correctly. Seems to be rotating right. Can move it, can rotate it. We can move this one. We can rotate that one. So those seem to be working just fine. So we can close that out. And so we can move on to the next step. So you can see this thing's starting to get fairly complex. We have a lot of stuff going on here, but that's okay. So the next thing that I want to do is give someone the ability to have either both chairs or one chair or no chairs. So the guest chairs, I want the ability to give someone that capability of saying I don't want either chair, or I just want one chair. So that is going to be a parameter called visibility. So I'm going to click on visibility and basically place it right up here in between these two chairs. It really doesn't matter where you place it, but I think between the two chairs is logical, so I'll put it right there. So with the visibility state parameter, there isn't an action that's associated with it. What you need to do is up here in the ribbon, you have the visibility states up here. So whenever you put in a visibility state like this, you're going to have that exclamation point. The first thing that you want to do is come up here to visibility and click on visibility states. And right now we only have one visibility state, which is called visibility state 0. So the first thing I'm going to do is rename that. So the visibility state 0 is what we currently see on our screen. So that state is going to be 2 guest chairs. All right. So I also want to have two other states. I want to have one guest chair and no guest chairs. So I'm going to click on New at this point, and we're going to put in another new visibility state, and I'm going to say one guest chair, and hit OK. So you can see that, and now I'm going to click on New again, and I'm going to say no guest chairs. All right, and we'll hit OK. So we have all of the states set up that we want. We just have to now tell the computer what visibility state is what. So notice that the exclamation point went off here. So right now I'm on no guest chairs. Here's two guest chairs. Okay. So we're going to go to one guest chair, and up top here what we have is make invisible or make visible. So I'm going to say make invisible. So we'll click on this, and I want to pick the chair, and I want to pick the two actions that we have in here. So we have move and rotate and the chair, and I'll hit enter. Okay, so that's going to be that. These actually should have went off too, so let me just do that again, and I'll actually just highlight all that stuff and hit enter. There we go. So one guest chair, that's what we have. So we can flex this right here. You can say two guest chairs. There's two. One guest chair. Okay, and let's go back down here to no guest chairs. So no guest chairs is going to make invisible all this stuff. So I'll just highlight all this stuff like that, hit enter. Okay, the visibility state's still there. Make sure that you don't hide this. That still needs to be there. So we have one guest chair, two guest chairs. Let's test our block to make sure that this is working. So let's go in here, test the block. So we can zoom up to this thing here now. We can pick this. So I have the ability still to rotate this one, move it. That's all good. But now I also have this visibility state, and I can say, okay, I want to see just one guest chair. That works. No guest chairs. That works. So I can click this down, two guest chairs. There we go. Seems to be working just fine. So that's great. We can go ahead and close that. All right. So the last one that I want to do for this is I want to be able to move this chair around as well. We're going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to do what we call a polar parameter here, and this is going to give us the ability to move and rotate this around a central point. So you'll see how that works here in a second. So I'll click on polar, and I'm going to basically pick this midpoint to this midpoint, and I want that to be the distance right there. All right. I'll put in the action for this, which is going to be a polar stretch. Okay, so we'll click on polar stretch. We'll pick the parameter, which is that right there, and then I want this to be the point at which it's going to rotate around this point. So I want to pick this point right here as my associated with the action. So we'll click on that, and first corner of the stretch frame, I want to just make a frame around the chair like so. And then I want to select this object and that parameter right there. And we'll hit enter. Select the objects to rotate, which is going to be this one here. And let's see if this works. So we'll come in here to test the block out. And when we look at this, I'm going to click on this, and you can see here how it stretches out, and I can kind of move it around, but it always follows that point right there. So you can see how that works. Alright, so we'll pick that, move that around like this. Alright. Problem is right now is I can also pick this grip, and I can move this point over here, and now this chair is rotating around that, which isn't what I want. So I want to actually hide that. Alright. And I think I did that a little bit fast for you guys, so I'm going to take it out and redo it one more time just so you can see how you can take something out. You can't just click on this stuff and delete that, and it'll keep things in the program. So what you want to do if you're going to erase something is actually first click on the action and right click on it and click on delete, and then you can actually delete the parameter just by going in there and erasing that part. So let's try this again so you can see it one more time. So parameter is going to be polar. We're going to go from midpoint to midpoint. We'll put it over here like that. Then the action, and we pick the action right here, distance 2, and now it's asking us to specify parameter point to associate with the action. I want this point right here. And now it asks me for my stretch frame. Okay, this is how it's going to stretch. What are we going to stretch? We're going to just stretch the chair out. Okay, so that's the chair stretching out. So you saw how I could kind of move the chair out. So I can basically go around this like that. And then I want to pick the chair. All right. And so when I hit enter, now it's asking me select the objects that I want to rotate. Okay, well, I want to rotate the chair as well, so I'll pick that. Okay, and I want to rotate the grip itself. Okay, right there, so I'll hit enter. And that's it for that. And to get rid of this grip right here, we do the same thing we did for distance 1. We basically click on it, right click, go into its properties, and come over here and find the number of grips and change it to 1. So that way we only have that one grip. Alright. So now if we go in to test the block, we should be able to see that we have just the one grip, and I can kind of rotate that around my desk, and it's always pointing right there at the middle, so you can kind of see. It'll stay there, and I can move it away from the desk, or I can move it out this way, or I can move it out this way. So that makes for a very nice block. We have lots that we can do with this block. So we'll close this out, and at this point here I haven't been doing any saving, which is kind of dangerous, so we'll come up here and we'll do a file save as, and we're going to call this, I'm going to just put it on my desktop for right now, desk set, and I'll put in dynamic, DYN for dynamic, and hit save. And we'll close our block editor, we'll save our changes, and now we're back into plain old AutoCAD, and we can test this thing out again. You know, we go in here and just double check everything, make sure we can move our chairs around, make sure that we can move it and align it to things. Okay, so you can see how that works. We can flip it. All right. Now notice what happened when we did the flip. All these grips went in here because this flip needs to include everything. So there's a mistake right there that I need to fix. Okay. You don't want to leave all these grips over here. If you mirror this thing, you know, it's going to cause someone to go, what's going on there? So so let's fix that right now. So we'll just double click on that, go back into the desk set here, and under flip state we basically need to come up here to flip right here and right click on this, action set, modify. So basically we're gonna just select everything, just make a big window around everything, select everything, just make one big window, hit enter, close the block editor, and save it. Alright, so let's try that again. So if we do this, flip, there we go. See how everything flips now and it's working, right? So that's why it's always important to, you know, make sure that everything's going right. So let's try our angle line and make sure that this is actually aligning still, flipping still. All right. Being able to rotate a chair, being able to move a chair, being able to just have one guest chair, being able to rotate that chair and maybe move it, maybe rotate it. Okay, so that seems to be working okay. And then the size of the desk, maybe make it 7.6. This thing here. Okay. Where'd my grip go for this? So we got a little bit of a problem there. I don't know where this grip went to. It's associated with that. Flip it back. Let's see, 2 guest chairs. There we go. Here's another problem that happened. So when I did 1 guest chair, somehow that got turned off. No guest chairs, still turned off. 2 guest chairs, it's on. So I can, okay, so again, another little problem. I didn't anticipate that one, but that's okay. So we'll go in here and double click and hit OK to edit this. And at this point here, we have to go in here to 2 guest chairs, 1 guest chair. Okay, so at 1 guest chair, this isn't on here, so we need to say make visible, and I'm going to basically click on that grip only. All right, so make visible. I want to pick all that stuff. All right, and then no guest chairs. Again, we want to click on make visible again, and I'm going to just click on all that stuff. All right, so that should have fixed that. There we go. So we'll fix that, and we'll close the block editor, save the changes, and now when I do this and do 1 guest chair, I still have that grip there, and I can now rotate it and move it back into position or whatever. So you can see how we can move that around. So there you have it, dynamic blocks. There are more things that you can do with them. This is just basically an introduction to this. It can get fairly complex, and if you want to study some other ones that are in here, I'm going to open up some other drawings in here, and actually we can do it through up here under view. We're going to come over here to the tool palettes. Is it in tool palettes? Yeah. So in tool palettes in here, you can see we have these lightning bolts always indicate a dynamic block. So for instance, here we have these vehicles, and I think I showed some of you guys this before. You can put this vehicle in here, and when you click on it, you have the move state where you can actually move it around. And you can click on this, and you can see the top view of that sports car, the front view of the sports car, the rear view of it, or a sedan. It's kind of crappy looking, or a truck from the top. So you have all these different visibility states. If we look at a door, for instance, we can bring in our door, and here's our door, and we have lots of parameters on this one where you click on this, and you can see we can get a 40 inch door, 36 inch, 32, 30, 28, 24. You can flip it from side to side. You can mirror it from side to side. This one right here lets you actually move it. This here will change the width of the wall from a 4-inch wall to a 5-inch wall to a 6-inch wall. And then up here you have the door opening state. So right now it's open 35. We can have it open 45. We can have it open 60. We can have it open 90. So quite a few parameters on there. But now you understand how those are made. And if you study some of these, it'll give you more ideas on other blocks that you could create doing this. So it's an experimentation process and a testing process, but it is fun, and it is something that is very useful in your work. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I look forward to your drawings.